I don't know about you, but when I think of awesome platformers, stylish JRPGs, and mediocre horror games, Nintendo's DS system flies into my mind. There's a plethora of amazingly unique titles released for the system, but one type of game that I felt was underrepresented was the fighting game genre. I mean, it's not hard to figure out why the DS didn't receive many fighting games, but I knew that there had to be some out there, so after spending the better part of an afternoon and missing a funeral doing research, I came across 4 titles that we're gonna look at today. Ranging from, yeah, I used to play this all the time as a kid, to I've never seen this game before in my life. We're going to explore some obscure fighting games that have been lost to time. Without further ado, let's get into our first game. Oh yeah, this is one that I have a lot of history with. Based on the iconic Naruto series of manga and anime, Ninja Destiny is a full-blown 3D fighting game released exclusively for the DS, and I remember having so much fun with this game as a kid. When preparing to revisit the game for this video, I had a thought. How would a 3D fighting game even work on the DS? The answer is actually quite well. You can press up or down on the D-pad to sidestep, and there's a separate jump button, so you won't accidentally get a jump when you want to step. You can also move forward and backwards, obviously, and there are multiple ways to attack your opponent. Just to get this out of the way, Ninja Destiny isn't exactly what I would call a deep 3D fighter, as although there are some fun combos to do, they're basically the result of button mashing. By spamming one of the primary attack buttons, you can do a basic string that ends in a hard knockdown, so this is your most simple form of offense. Attacking after a jump will let you throw out some kunai, and while they serve as the game's universal ranged attack, they have poor accuracy and damage. If your mashing isn't as strong as the enemies, however, there are a few defensive techniques too. You can sidestep, block, and even use some of your meter to teleport behind them. This technique was always one of my favorites from the anime as a kid, and it's awesome to have it serve as a combo breaker tool in Ninja Destiny. Choosing when to use the substitution technique is crucial because you don't want to be caught without any meter and eat a big combo as a result, so there are some light strategic elements involving meter management brought about by this system. When your meter is full, you can press the final attack button to perform supers, and these take the form of cinematic attacks. Instant kills these are not, but they do look decent enough, and seeing how fast some of the characters animate on the DS always impressed me when I was younger. Supers can do really big damage, but there's one quality about them that I noticed almost immediately upon revisiting the game. If I'm not mistaken, all the supers in Ninja Destiny are completely unblockable, so if you're right up close to the enemy and you super, they will always get hit. The best way to think about them is to picture the supers as sort of command grabs. They don't look like grabs, but they function the same, so try using sidesteps and jumps to escape them. Oh yeah, before I forget, you can also use items found on the bottom screen for a boost, and these can help you out when times are tough. Extra meter and health have saved me more times than I can count, so item management surprisingly plays a role in this game too. Moving on from the fighting mechanics, there are 16 characters here, and I think that this is a solid amount of characters, especially for a DS game. You have to unlock around half of them by fulfilling specific requirements, and I always loved this as I never knew who would pop up next. They all fundamentally play the same, and while this does let newer players pick up and play as their favorite character with ease, it does lead to all of these iconic characters feeling very homogeneous. The characters in the Naruto lore all come from different backgrounds and fighting styles, and even though that I feel they're represented wonderfully in Ninja Destiny via their animations and sound effects that are accurate to the source material, they don't provide much replay value in terms of gameplay depth. Moving on to content now, there's a story mode, versus mode, and multiplayer. These last two might seem the exact same, but the former provides battles involving the CPU, and the latter involves 2 DS systems communicating via wireless connectivity. I can't remember if I ever did offline versus with another person when I was younger, but I do remember fighting the CPU a lot, and it quickly becomes repetitive, much to my disappointment. So yeah, the versus offerings are pretty bare bones, but what about the story mode? Ninja Destiny's plot takes place during the Chunin exams. Basically, the lowest form of ninja, genin, are given the opportunity to rise up the ranks and become a chunin via these exams, and they take the form of a tournament of sorts. It's best to think of this whole process as an arcade mode, as it's really all about fighting enemies in a linear order until you reach the final boss. Plenty of cutscenes are sprinkled throughout, and they take the form of visual novel segments where characters speak to each other. Save for a few lines here and there in battle, there's no voice acting, and with how little data developers had to cram into DS cartridges, it makes total sense why. In my view, Ninja Destiny's greatest sin is its lack of meaningful content. I can look past the simple gameplay mechanics because, well, this was never designed to be taken seriously in a competitive setting, but I don't believe that the story mode or CPU battles will captivate audiences in the long term. Overall, I did have a lot of fun with Naruto Ninja Destiny, even if its flaws are much more apparent to me now that I'm older and more experienced with fighting games. If you like anime and you need a portable game to kill some time with, definitely check this game out. Speaking of portable games with heavy anime influences, Guilty Gear Dust Strikers is the series' first and only foray into DS territory, and it's one that I've never played before. Taking inspiration from Guilty Gear Isuka, or Asuka, I'm actually not sure how you meant to pronounce it, a 4-player focused spin-off released in 2004, Dust Strikers aims to bring the gameplay formula of that game and fit it onto a DS cartridge, so let's see if it's any good. In a unique twist on the series formula, Dust Strikers prioritizes verticality in its combat systems over a more traditional horizontal style of fighting. You can run and jump between the many platforms on screen, and you can also freely move left and right to travel along the map. Blocking is performed automatically, and there are items for you to collect which can be activated by tapping the bottom right corner of the touchscreen. Okay, this is all well and good, but the elephant in the room here concerns how to input your attacks. Instead of having to do motion inputs that are often very complex like in regular Guilty Gear, the attacks here have been ultra simplified to make performing them on the DS very easy. In addition to having weak, strong, and dust attacks, you can also press the A button and a direction to do one-button specials, and this system, to me at least, reminds me a lot of Super Smash Bros. Character move lists are easily accessible on the select screen, and this makes figuring out how your favorite character changed is something I really appreciate. Speaking of characters, there are 21 of them, and with how unique they all are in both visuals, audio, and gameplay, this is very impressive. All the classic characters and moves you would want to see make appearances in Dust Strikers, so I really commend the developers for cramming it all in. I've always been a fan of Potemkin, so not only having access to Hammerfall, Slidehead, Mega Fist, etc., but also an instant Potemkin Buster is awesome, and the move looks super funny here. Whee! Supers also have simplified inputs, and this not only makes doing them in combos easier, but they're much easier to do in neutral as well. If the opponent jumps and I don't have the read, I can just react on the spot and do an instant Heavenly Potemkin Buster, no quarter circles needed. This kind of breaks the balancing behind certain moves, but we're not going to worry about that, just shh. Roaming cancels and bursts are here too, so for all intents and purposes, Dust Strikers does provide players with a pretty complete Guilty Gear experience, at least in terms of gameplay features. It's not all perfect, however, as I found that constantly having to jump to and from platforms doesn't really work with the Guilty Gear formula, as the series was never designed for this style of gameplay. Smash Bros. Makes platform fighting instantly intuitive, as the whole series was designed for movement patterns, frame data, hitboxes, etc. like this from day one, and I don't feel that Arc System Works were able to truly capture the magic of old school Guilty Gear in Dust Strikers. There are so many times where I went to jump and go after my opponent, but Soul just wouldn't face the right way, and I'd end up whiffing my button. I also couldn't quite get the hang of how combos work, so I kind of just button mashed and threw in some specials towards the end of the combo. Characters who are originally balanced around slow movement options also get murdered in Dust Strikers, as the more agile fighters can easily outrun them, and it means that some matchups can be super lopsided. But enough dooming about the gameplay, let's explore the content. Unlike Ninja Destiny, there are many modes to be found here, so we're off to a good start. Arcade mode is a series of fights against randomly generated enemies, and story mode is a sort of personalized arcade mode where every character has fights that are specific to them. The story here is pretty flimsy, and I thought that the reasons for why the characters start beating each other up were kind of half-assed at times, but look, I'm not gonna go full turbo nerd mode and say the game sucks because of it. Story mode also lets you experience 4 character battles, and in my opinion, these are a bit too chaotic. It's awesome how the DS can render so many characters and moves in real time, but it's really challenging trying to keep up with it all, and I was often left confused as to what was going on. Versus mode and challenge mode involve fighting against other people using multiple DS systems, so I wasn't able to test these out, but Arcade Factory more than made up for this. Put simply, as you play through Dust Strikers minigames, you unlock new moves for Robo-Kai, and you can use these moves to create your own personalized version of our robot friend. If you ever played Fight Lab in Tekken Tag Tournament 2, this is pretty much exactly the same thing, and I'm a sucker for modes like this. Having the opportunity to build your own custom character and make them as weak or overpowered as you want is pretty good fun, and theory crafting the best possible combinations of moves can lead to some thoughtful discussions. There are 6 moves for you to equip, and doing so leads to this nifty animation of the professor tinkering with Robo-Kai, which kind of made me feel bad for him. I mean, look, I know he's a robot and he can't really feel pain, but I still feel pretty bad for him. There isn't a huge list of moves to choose from due to file size limitations, but the moves that do show up are iconic, and the music that plays in this mode is pretty cool too. Going back to the minigames for a moment, I think they're all really fun. You'll be helping Jam maintain balance, assisting Venom in playing pool, and cleaning Bridget's yo-yo, just to name a few. They all make great use of the DS's touchscreen capabilities, and I enjoy some of these more than the actual fighting. I mean, come on, having a billiard simulator inside of a Guilty Gear game pretty much makes this an instant 10 out of 10. Okay, jokes aside, these minigames are a really big far cry from the edgy early 2000s nearly naked lady on the soundtrack aesthetic of old Guilty Gear, and while they do represent a really stark and sudden tonal shift for the series, I really loved how wholesome these were. Guilty Gear Dust Strikers' primary gameplay loop does have some major flaws that impacted my playability, but with awesome content, audio, presentation, and minigames, I can't really fault the title too much, and I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would going in. The furthest thing from an anime fighter has pretty much always been old school Mortal Kombat, what with its focus on explicit violence, simplified motion inputs, and carpal tunnel inducing control schemes. Seriously, what the hell is this? So this should serve as a nice palate cleanser before we get into the next game. Serving as a port of 1995's Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, Ultimate Mortal Kombat is a DS exclusive, and like Ninja Destiny, I haven't played this game in eons, so I can't remember much about it. For starters, every single character from the arcade version of MK3 is here, and you can even unlock Mileena, Ermac, and the original Ninja Sub-Zero too. Having all the characters in this version is spectacular, and it means that if an arcade player ever tried out this port, then the main wasn't excluded. On the topic of characters, they play, look, and sound almost identically to their arcade counterparts, and it was good fun spamming fireballs with Cabal in the arcade ladders. I've always been a very casual Mortal Kombat fan, and I wouldn't be able to tell if there were any major changes when you compare the arcade and the DS versions of this game. But thanks to this website I found that's perpetually stuck in 2004, I was able to come to a revelation of sorts. Apparently, Ultimate Mortal Kombat on DS is 20% faster than the arcade version of Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, and this has major impacts on the juggle combos of many characters. In addition to this, the character sprites have been stretched to fit the DS's aspect ratio, so they're not identical to the original arcade version. Also, and this is something that even I noticed, some stages in this DS version cause frame rate issues, which is the worst issue a fighting game can ever run into, and the developers included some workarounds, thankfully. You can actually disable blood in the settings and also play on less intensive stages, but look man, come on, is it really Mortal Kombat without the blood? Anyway, character move lists are presented opposite the gameplay on the other screen, and this is also very clever. Not everyone wants to memorize an entire command list before they start playing, so having access to this information in real time during the match made things so much more enjoyable. In terms of content, Ultimate Mortal Kombat isn't amazing, at least so far. You can fight the AI in various arcade ladders, but their input reading AI makes this a bit annoying, especially if you're new to Mortal Kombat. On a more positive note, the game includes a full-blown online multiplayer mode. It's absolutely possible to play wirelessly with those in the same room as you, but with the power of DS Online play, I miss you can fight against others online. I obviously can't test this out due to the game being less populated than a nun's pants, but from what I read online, it worked as well as you could expect for netcode from 2007 on a portable system. There were even leaderboards for those wishing to make a name for themselves on Ranked, although I can't imagine many matches would have been lag-free due to the DS lacking any sort of wired connectivity. Okay, normally we'd be done here and we just move on to the next game, but Ultimate Mortal Kombat actually includes another major mode. Originating from Mortal Kombat Deception, Puzzle Combat lets you play as these horrifically deformed versions of Mortal Kombat's iconic character roster, and you can perform iconic skills like Invisible, Freeze, and Edger. Boy, that didn't age well. Puzzle Combat is essentially a reskin of Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, which is a classic by the way. And much like with Guilty Gear Dust Strikers, I genuinely found more enjoyment with the minigame over the main game. These types of puzzle games where you match colors with connected blocks to create destruction combos are so simple yet so satisfying, and I'll just never get bored of them. By playing well and sending more blocks to your opponent, you fill up the super bar, and the effects of this are character specific. Scorpion, for example, reels the enemy in with his spear, screwing their block layout, and this means that you have to identify which character has the right super for you. Even though the overall package would have been acceptable without Puzzle Combat, I really admire its inclusion here, and it's a win-win for those involved. The publishers get to slap it on the back of the box, the die-hard fans get to re-experience a beloved piece of extra content from an earlier title, and the newer fans/casual DS players get to play a fun puzzle game. It may not seem like much, but I honestly think that Puzzle Combat made the title an easier sell to those a bit apprehensive about playing a portable Mortal Kombat title. To be honest, I sometimes got carried away during my recording sessions and would just keep playing Puzzle Combat without realizing that 20 to 30 minutes had gone by, so to label it as addictive would definitely be an understatement. Ultimate Mortal Kombat was specifically aimed at pre-existing Mortal Kombat fans, so I doubt it brought any new fans into the series, and although there aren't many reasons to play the game nowadays, I can imagine that back in 2007, this would have been really cool. The DS didn't have many high-profile mature-rated games, let alone mature-rated fighting games, so this was a really nice breath of fresh air when compared to the more all-ages games on the system. Okay, that's enough time spent in the West, so let's mosey back over to Anime Land, home of ninjas, aliens, future court material, and some killer literature. Released as a Japanese exclusive, Jump Ultimate Stars is a crossover title that throws Shonen Jump properties together, and I'm using a fan-made English patch to experience the game. As a disclaimer, this is quite the tricky game to wrap your head around, and since this translation isn't official, I struggled to keep up with all the game mechanics, so you're gonna have to bear with me. This is a platform fighter that involves you jumping to and from multiple platforms, so it's a bit like Dust Strikers. There are multiple ways to attack the enemy, including normals and specials, although there's not much in the way of combos, at least as far as I can tell. My usual strategy was to hit the enemy near the edge of the map and then keep doing my charge move to knock them off, earning me points in the process. The player with the most points by the end of the match is the winner, and this reminds me a lot of PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, which I'm sure I'll get to one day. Staying away from edges and potential stage hazards is a sound idea, as you can easily fall off the map if you aren't careful, although you can grab onto edges if you're knocked off. The biggest gripe I have with the gameplay is that there's a lot of delay in between attacks. For example, instead of being able to land on a platform and instantly keep moving, you have to wait for your character's landing animation to end before you can act. This leaves you vulnerable to being attacked, and it's almost like you're being punished for moving around the stage. As a side note, I also noticed that the stages themselves are manga panels. Each one takes place in a specific universe, more on that later, but you can actually see where the panels end if you go to the end of the map, and I love this detail. It does a brilliant job of making the game world really feel alive, and it also reinforces the fact that the player is in a cool manga universe. Okay, going back to my regularly scheduled dooming, normal attacks also tend to have stubby hitboxes, and this means that you'll often miss an enemy and just kind of be stuck in place for a bit. I also found that spamming special moves over and over and over was a bit overpowered in the single player mode, as the enemy AI doesn't do a good job of defending against these attacks properly. This next point is also just a personal preference, but I feel that not enough of the game is on screen at once, and this led to me being confused about my surroundings. Off-screen enemies are marked with trackers, but with how many characters and visual effects are on screen at once, it can be pretty challenging to keep track of it all. After turning that frown upside down, I realized that there are lots of characters here too. I wasn't able to unlock them all, but instantly recognizable series like Naruto, One Piece, Dragon Ball Z, Death Note, and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, The GOAT, all make appearances in Ultimate Stars, and it's amazing seeing these iconic characters rendered on the DS. They all look and sound perfect, and the animation quality in general is very well done. On the topic of characters, there are plenty of them here that act in purely support roles, and this brings me to the deck system. Before a fight begins, you're presented with a customizable deck that contains images of popular manga characters. These images all do different things, with some of them containing playable characters that you can switch to mid-match, characters that provide assist attacks, and some that give you passive bonuses. This is a very clever way of including characters who aren't playable, as it still provides their fans with ways to meaningfully interact with them. The only downside to the system is that it can be very overwhelming, especially in the beginning, and the really lengthy tutorials that seem to go on forever do much more harm than good. However, I understood the systems a lot better once I actually got the chance to try it out for myself though, so it makes fractionally more sense once you have the opportunity to have Naruto third wheel next to Goku and Chi-Chi. You gain new characters over the course of the story mode, and I thought this mode was fun, but not perfect. Every level is a battle against the AI, and although there are multiple win conditions you have to fulfill in the campaign stages, it does get a bit repetitive over time. As a result, I had a lot of fun playing Jump Superstars in short bursts rather than devoting long sessions to it, and since this is a portable game, I feel that this method works a lot in its favor. Browsing through the unique menus to see which manga universe we'd be exploring next was good fun, even though I don't know half the characters, and beginning a series of levels gives you a cool cutscene for each series. If it wasn't obvious already, this game is heavily targeted at Shonen Jump fans, and your enjoyment heavily depends on your experience with their work. Having a highly specific target audience is something that I view as being very important for a game, so it's a very commendable quality of the title, and it oozes fan service from beginning to end. If you like platform fighters and manga that made a whole generation of young men be really into goth girls, then you have no excuse. It definitely goes without saying by now, but the DS has some killer fighting games on offer, and I had a blast recording footage for all of these games. They all make wonderful use of the DS's capabilities, and this leads to a unique experience with each title. I mean, it's not every day that you get to use a touchscreen and tactile buttons in a fighting game, so I really enjoyed my experiences here. I really recommend whipping out your old DS or using an emulator to experience these games that have kind of been lost to time now that I think about it, as I feel that their memory deserves to be kept alive. There are plenty of other fighting games on the system, however, so if you would like to see a continuation in the future, let me know in the comments. Thank you very, very much for watching my video, I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.